making the vote central to her platform. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what do you make of this information? And I mean, and compare and contrast it with what you saw in Georgia in 2018. I mean, because we were like
saying, look, we know this is coming. We see this coming, and we've got to do something about it. The concern that I have is that we only have 10 months, roughly 10 months, to put in place a system in a battleground state, a state that is so vitally important to this election. And I'm concerned that the forces that are at play, that are enabling this, that are facilitating these malfunctions or blocking what we know could happen, which would be to have sufficient equipment, sufficient training, to have whatever we need to accommodate the unprecedented number of voters, I'm concerned that they may prevail. And I think that anyone, and it really doesn't matter which party you are a member of, although I suspect that this is more conservative driven. But we should want anyone who wants to vote, we should want them to be allowed to vote in these United States of America. This is just going to be devastating. I think that we will see unprecedented numbers of people coming out to vote. That's because the people are tired of something, and they want to speak, and they want to exercise their right to vote, and they're going to do that. Will their votes be counted? That's another issue, because we could have a situation, as we saw in Georgia, and as we've seen repeatedly in Florida. We saw this when Gore was running, where we have ballots that are found in the middle of the highway. I personally witnessed a number of, many Latino voters who presented at my precinct in Brookhaven, who were given provisional ballots because the volunteers just simply didn't have the time, didn't have anyone who was a Spanish speaker, didn't seek out. And we're it was a district, a part of Brookhaven, where there's a large Hispanic community. It was completely foreseeable that you would have voters that were Spanish speaking that may need some help. And the volunteers were not trained for in general, but they certainly weren't trained to accommodate Spanish-speaking voters, and they just automatically gave them provisional ballots, and who knows what happened to those ballots. This is and I had to wait for 2 hours to vote, by the way, and I was there. The precinct opened at 7 o'clock. I was there at 6:30 and had to wait for 2 hours to vote. And many of the machines weren't functioning when I got there, and we were at one point, and there were lines around the building operating with 3 machines that were functioning. It was just unbelievable. And I've done democratic elections, first democratic elections in various countries in Africa, and none of that ever existed. And this was in the late 80s and the early 90s. So this is inexplicable. It's by design. I'm very concerned. But we are still going to coalesce and make sure that everyone has the right to vote. And I think what's going to be critically important, and this is one of the things that I'm chairing for the National Bar, is that we have a more robust than ever election protection effort. What do I mean by that? We must have lawyers and people trained at election to be in the precincts on election day when these irregularities pop up. And when you see things that we know are clearly designed to have voter suppression, we have to be there. We have to be present. Lawyers need to be in those precincts, and it makes a difference. I set this up when Obama ran in his first election, and we had unprecedented numbers of lawyers and people involved in the election protection effort on election day in the precincts, ensuring the fairness, because it is so subjective, and particularly in certain parts of the country and certain areas within certain states. So I think one way of ensuring some level of fairness for the vote is having the most robust election protection effort that we've ever seen. That's one thing. But getting to the election is another challenge. And if you get there and you don't have the equipment or the volunteers to function, that's another challenge. But we now know this is going to be an issue. So I find it very difficult to believe in 10 months' time, even though it's not looking great, we cannot put ourselves in the best position to accommodate the unprecedented numbers of voters that are going to come out, because we're going to have a revolution. if people, and I don't mean that literally, but there will be protesting.
Okay,
I feel
because you're
very
sounding like
comfortable.
Bernetta Sanders right here, but that's all right.
Well, I don't, and I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to preach that way. I'm just saying, if people get to the voting station, they're prepared to vote. They wait in long lines, and they can't vote or they can't cast their vote because machines aren't working. There are going to be protests everywhere, and it's going to cause, I think, a situation that we've not seen in this country, not on election day.
But you know what?
So,
But seriously, I just teased you, okay? But I think we're watching a revolution in slow motion, Attorney Hoffler and David Daley, because you see the volatility in the electorate lets you know something is going on. I mean, the election of a black president, in and of itself, although he was a centrist, that was a huge deal because remember, the banking system had collapsed. Our economy collapsed. I mean, in addition to the student loan debt and for, unprecedented housing foreclosures, Goldman Sachs went to Nancy Pelosi and said, give me $770 billion today by close of business or we're collapsing the economy. You remember that. That was 2008. And Americans were so through that they crashed the congressional phone system. So many Americans called. They were not equipped to handle all the calls that came from Americans. And then they changed the system so only so many calls can get through now. But that's part of that story. So, I mean, and then
what we're witnessing right now is a backlash.
Okay, because we saw Bernie, Trump, what are we going to do, right? So, no, go on, Dave.
Even further than that, I mean, I would say that Republicans woke up the morning after Barack Obama was elected president of the United States, and they said that there's a demographic change happening in this country, that this country is becoming more diverse, and that
Dave Daley, are you saying that you are public enemy? This is fear of a black planet. Are you telling me this is fear of a black planet, Dave Daley?
I am saying that Republicans launched plans